For a long time, I've dealt with plenty of online people accusing me of being some type of thing, claiming I was destroying games by making my videos, that I was a terrible person for pointing out the hypocrisies in games media. Sometimes, I even got called a grifter or had hate pieces written on me. None of it worked though, because clearly this hasn't worked the way that my detractors have intended. I like to think my content has evolved since my early days. But I've always stood firm on the point that the games industry, as a whole, needed to stop weaponizing and attacking its consumer base at any moment that they could find. Recently, there was a big expose surrounding certain groups, according to the United States government. This all involved something called the SPLC. The SPLC, or Southern Poverty Law Center, is an organization that has existed to combat extremism within the United States and beyond for decades. They've worked with many groups to find these sources of extremism, expose them, and dismantle them from the inside to serve the American people. Or, so we thought anyways. In case you don't know, what also happened recently was that the United States government alleges that the SPLC was not only working to dismantle these groups, but they were, according to the American FBI division, the SPLC was actually funding the groups that they were also working to destroy. A lot of people believe the United States government, a lot of people still refuse to believe it now, and, well, it's a giant mess. I should probably say now, I am not accusing anyone of being a part of this in any which way. That being said, this is what is being reported. I could say what I want here, but instead, I'm gonna let the FBI themselves explain to you guys exactly what's going on and why this matters, so please watch this.
What we're here today is to announce what the general just told you. The Southern Poverty Law Center, in a massive sweeping indictment, has been charged with allegations of fraud and using the banking system to perpetrate that fraud. I just want to talk about a couple of brief things here. The Southern Poverty Law Center themselves advertise to raise money to dismantle violent extremist groups for a period of at least a decade. They use their donor network to raise money to purportedly dismantle violent extremist groups. However, the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, used the money they raised from their donor network to actually pay the leadership of these very groups. I just want to say that again. They used the fraudulently raised money by lying to their donor network, thousands of Americans, to go ahead and actually pay the leadership of these supposed violent extremist groups. The groups, as the general laid out, include the Ku Klux Klan, the United Klans of America, Unite to Right, National Alliance, the National Socialist Movement, the Aryan Nation Motorcycle Club, and the National Socialist Party of America, and also the American Front. In at least one of these matters, our investigation revealed that funds were used to facilitate the commission of further state and federal offenses, totaling over $3 million. Furthermore, our investigation revealed that the Southern Poverty Law Center, on top of perpetuating this widespread, decade-long, multi-million-dollar fraud, conducted more criminal activity. They attempted to hide their criminal activity from our financial banking network. They set up shell companies and entities around America so that the financial institutions that we rely on as everyday Americans were deceived in believing that money was not coming from the Southern Poverty Law Center in the perpetration of this scheme and fraud, but rather fictitious entities they stood up to perpetuate this ongoing fraud. This is a serious and egregious violation of a group that purported to dismantle violent extremist groups, but in turn actually only fueled the hatred. This is an important case brought by President Trump's administration. We're thankful for the president for his leadership and funding of not just the FBI and DOJ, but his commitment to go out there and wipe out fraud and conspiracy and waste and wherever it occurs, including the Southern Poverty Law Center. Even though this money was made to appear to be coming from legitimate people and legitimate entities, we at the FBI, with our great partners at the Department of Justice and in the state of Alabama, were able to comb through a decade worth of material, a scheme that took a decade to build, so that we were able to follow the money, because money never lies, and they got caught. As the Attorney General said, these charges are varying, they are widespread and wide-ranging, and this investigation is very much ongoing. Today we're here to announce the charges of the Southern Poverty Law Center, and this investigation and the individuals who are responsible will be brought to justice. Thank you, General.
So as you just saw, that was Kash Patel. That's the FBI director who stood on stage and told the American people that the SPLC was in fact gaming the system. They were effectively manipulating everyone by allegedly using the funds they got through those donations to then create the very groups that they claimed existed so that they could continue gaining donations through their own revenue streams, effectively creating a snake that was eating its own tail, where the problematic hate groups would exist and be chased and attacked by the very group that also created them. So why do this? It's simple. Money, but also influence. If you need to have problems to justify your existence and to also sway things in your direction, well, you can just create the problems yourself. It's sort of like if someone owns a glass repair company, they're just gonna hire some kids to just go around smashing glass windows. Oh no, our glass windows are broken. Who are we gonna call? Oh look, it's a glass repair company. Rinse and repeat. You stay in business, the businesses get concerned about more glass getting broken in the future. The feedback loop eats upon itself. That's the SPLC, but with extremism. So what does this have to do with video games? Well, since the SPLC got exposed and everything has gone down, people started to look into if any game companies have had ties to the SPLC, and one which was found was Bungie. Bungie, as you may know, they made Halo, but they also did Destiny and Marathon. Bungie, for a long time now, has been an advocate for a lot of social change. That's putting it lightly. So I decided to look myself. Bungie also has an Instagram page that is called Bungie Foundation. And on this page, Bungie routinely raises money for all sorts of social causes. Some of them also caught my eye, and I will say now, I don't think that Bungie possibly knew that the SPLC was doing what they were doing when they were aligning with them. What I do think Bungie was doing here was they were probably donating money to any cause that they could find to better their image in general. But of course, I can't confirm that. Either way, as seen here on the Bungie Foundation Instagram page on February 10th, 2025, Bungie had a Black History Month banner for their game Destiny that could be claimed if users donated $10 to the SPLC donation page. This cannot be denied. I literally screenshotted this 10 minutes before writing this video on April 26, 2026. So as of right now, anyways, I guess, this post is still on Bungie's Foundation Instagram page. Again, I'm not claiming that Bungie knew where this money was going ultimately, and my opinion here is that Bungie likely was being swindled and manipulated like everyone else who supported the SPLC as well. But either way, since I saw people online claiming that Bungie was funding the SPLC, here I am now, of course, looking into it. Interesting still, though, is that Bungie has also worked with another thing called Game to Give, another foundation that also has worked with the SPLC. To prove that, here's another Instagram post from Bungie's foundation page again, confirming that Bungie had another emblem banner item that was tied directly to donating to Game to Give. A simple Google search shows, as seen here, that the SPLC and Game to Give were connected, and allegedly, Game to Give has given, according to Google, somewhere near almost $6 million in total by early 2024 in donations. As Google says there, the Game to Give and Bungie Foundation are intricately connected. Now, do I think Bungie knew this money was being sent to fund these extremist groups? I can't say for sure. I do think the more logical assumption here would be that Bungie was being manipulated, like all the other companies that were also funding the SPLC, thinking that they were doing some sort of justice, I guess, for the world, when in reality, they were being played the same way as everyone else was too. So I'm not going to claim that Bungie is some mastermind of funding hate, because that can't be proven, so no, I will not do that. But were they manipulated? Probably, yeah, but that is the point, right? You see, what I think a lot of companies, Bungie included, were being sold was something, and then something else entirely was being done with those funds instead. It would be like some group asking you for money to build houses in some like third world country, right? And then you find out that the money that was being used to fund a war or something instead. Like, that's what I think was happening. Despite these companies' best intentions, they were being played, and many of them probably didn't even know it. Here's another emblem that I found on Bungie's page, also directly tied to GameToGive.com. And another, as you can see here, also from Bungie, with Game to Give being the direct recipient. Again, I think Bungie may have thought that they were doing some good here, but they still got swindled like everybody else. So the point of this video is not to attack Bungie or call anyone stupid. The point here is to prove to everybody watching that we all need to be smarter than this. And we need to start logically looking at things and not just accepting them at face value. It's exactly why I'm not accusing Bungie of somehow mismanaging funds to destroy right-wing extremism or something like that. Because to accuse them of something like that, I would then also be accusing every other company or person who also did the same. When in reality, I think everyone collectively was being played by the SPLC Foundation in the end here. You see, some may have thought I would make this video and be yelling, "Look, Bungie did it," but no. Because that's what some other groups would maybe want me to say. They'd want me to be blind and hateful because that's how they might see me. When in reality, I'm neither of those things and never will be. You see, the basis of this channel has and always will be my common sense and level-headed takes, because that's how I am and I'm always going to be that way. You can't just swing accusations around to prove something. You have to look deeper into things first. How do I put this into video game terms so it makes more sense? This would be like me claiming that there's only one villain in Metal Gear Solid as a series, when in reality everyone in Metal Gear is being played by someone else in some way, you know? It's so layered that it would be a disservice to just say that this one person is the bad guy. And in what we're seeing here with the SPLC and all of that, I don't think you can just blanket term and say Bungie did it because, well, they didn't. I think what happened is that the SPLC, according to the US government, planned all of this to work this way as they intended it. They created the problem and then they offered the solution, almost like how a gaming consultant like an SBI would work as well too. Oh, you don't have enough diversity in this game. Well, we will cancel you or talk bad about you behind your back unless you hire us. Oh, you're hiring us now. Okay, let's now fix the problem we created, shall we? You get the idea. Everyone involved here was being played, whether it was their best or their worst intentions. But what it proves to me, more than anything, is how easily people can be manipulated into believing things. Hate, as we know, it's a powerful emotion. There's an Iron Maiden song about the thin line between it for a reason. But the thing is that when someone is hateful, they oftentimes get blinded by that emotion and are unable to see right from wrong because all they see is red in that moment. I think when you look logically by zooming out and staring at the absolute state of the games industry, movies too and more as well if you want to include them, is that everybody was sold a lie. Everyone was told that there were these groups that were boogeymen just waiting to jump out and get you. Instead, what the American government is saying is that the SPLC basically manipulated everybody with fake reports. And some may say, well, maybe the government is making that up too. Well, that is also a take now, isn't it? And that can't be discredited either. And that is just another layer to this very annoying lasagna, because at some point, the truth and fiction ends up becoming so synonymous that you almost don't really know who to trust anymore. I think companies like a Bungie were so brainwashed by the hate machine that was being drummed up in 2016 all the way until now that they were likely convinced that what the media was feeding them was real, but it was all a ruse. It was designed to steal their money through those donations to fund the very things they feared because it made the SPLC the money that they craved. And that's scary to me because it shows how easily people can be manipulated, even billion-dollar companies. Again, does Bungie have activist weirdos working there? Absolutely, yes, sure, to some degree. But at the same time, I think the majority of why Bungie would even push for such social change is also simple. It's because IGN exposed them years ago for not following their own mantra already. You see, in 2021, as seen here from IGN, they ran a hit piece on Bungie accusing the Destiny makers of not having a good work culture. This piece by IGN was done by allegedly speaking to over 20 Bungie employees during 2021 when this all took place. IGN accuses Bungie of being a company that claimed that it cared about diversity, which in 2021, this was a hot topic that every company was pushing. Yet IGN accused Bungie of being also a toxic work environment too, as IGN says here in their own article. Bungie would hire a diversity and inclusion director, update hiring practices, improve training and tools, allow anonymous HR reporting, and end forced arbitration. The announcement was lauded across the industry, appearing to be a set of proactive, forward-looking moves amid industry-wide working condition scandals. The response from within the company was different, IGN would continue. Many of its current and former employees felt that their experiences at the company going as far back as 2011 and as recently as this year dramatically clashed with Bungie's virtuous self-portrait, while some praised the news, for many others, hiring a D&I director or ending mandatory arbitration in all employee contracts was far too little, far too late. For others still, it was only one step on a long journey to a potentially better future, but with the roadblocks remaining along the way. As IGN confirmed here, they spoke to 26 employees of Bungie, and these accounts claimed against Bungie that they went from things like HR protection of bullies that worked there, microaggressions, like good God, remember that term? I haven't heard that in a long time. They claimed that Bungie was a boys club with its culture and women were not being heard in the workspace and more. Again, this was IGN saying this based on what Bungie employees relayed to them 5 years ago. IGN even detailed, as seen here, how one narrative lead was so toxic apparently that he was throwing chairs at windows, and that other employees would keep a countdown to this narrative lead's next meltdown on a whiteboard to update it because it happened so often. As IGN states here, allegedly this narrative lead was so toxic, a female employee was crying on the phone speaking to him, and would refuse to speak to this lead guy further unless someone else was present to listen in on the call. So why am I telling you all of this? The point here is that Bungie has been exposed by places like IGN years ago for plenty of toxicity already, which only further implies that the more recent things like having your donations given to the SPLC were likely done to clean your image. Again, I don't think that Bungie knew that the SPLC was corrupted. I think they genuinely just saw the SPLC and Game to Give, which is, like I said, aligned with the SPLC as avenues for Bungie to again clean up their image, so to speak, right? To make what they believed would be real change, in order to prove that they have grown as a company and they weren't what IGN was accusing them of 5 years ago. But this is also the point. Bungie, like many companies, got so entrenched with trying to clean their image, they never could have guessed that they were effectively funding the very hate groups that they were told were the enemy. And this is why I think over the past few years, when you factor in, let's say, Gamergate 2 and all that too, which was also labeled far right and a part of what the SPLC was fighting against, this paints a sobering picture for everybody, which is that everyone was being played by them. I still remember when The Verge, as you can see here, had their hit piece trying to claim that GG2 was smaller and sadder. In reality, GG2 changed everything actually. A lot of that activism stuff has been gutted pretty much, and a lot of the pandering was also removed from plenty of studios. But The Verge also tried to claim that GG2 was started by Brutus Rambo, when in reality, it was Chris Kindred, who worked at SBI, that started it by attacking and trying to get Brutus Rambo banned over his Steam plugin for DEI games. And the reason why I bring this up is what you have is the reality, which is that GG2 was not started by Brutus. That these hate groups these companies were so scared of do not exist at the level that they believe that they did. And they were in fact being created through the SPLC to swindle more money out of companies thinking that they were being virtuous, when actually they were being paid basically to create the boogeyman that would also scare them. It was a classic snake oil salesman tactic at work. But that's why it's so important to call it out, because people were getting manipulated. And now that the truth, so to speak anyways, is out, I'm also noticing a lot of websites that did attack GG2 and then some are also being suspiciously quiet when it comes to this whole SPLC story and the revelation of their direct connection to creating those right-wing groups so many websites claimed existed and they were combating against. Because I noticed whenever the games industry journalists get cooked by reality and truth, which is quite often, let's be real, they suddenly go quiet. Kind of like a cockroach having a light shined on them. Suddenly, facts don't matter, and what's really going down is conveniently just ignored. After all, why hasn't IGN or Kotaku or The Verge spoke at length on how the groups they wrote for years were going to destroy America were also being funded by liberal activist groups? Well, you probably won't see that because they can't admit that they were wrong. Otherwise, that would just diminish their already dwindling influence even further. But it does need to be said, because this back and forth spitting contest is doing nobody any favors. The truth is that the gaming community, as in the players who keep everything alive, through their money and their engagement, that's you and me, are in actuality not as bigoted or maybe as evil as the games industry would like you to believe. Instead, players are really passionate. Sure, they may say some things here or there, but overall, they're still normal people. But that doesn't work for the narrative they're trying to sell. That every user who opposes the gods that IGN and these game companies worship could actually be wrong instead. What this also comes down to is institutional influence. That is also key here. And this matters because over the last decade and more, there's just more and more organizations, right? Advocacy groups and watchdog groups, even consulting firms. They have objectively begun interacting with the entertainment space in ways they would have been, unthinkable 20 years ago. But that is the truth right now. And when you had a civil rights organization created to track extremism like the SPLC, what this story proves above anything else is how external frameworks and advocacy have influenced the creative industries that we know and love. That cannot be denied. And that influence has objectively complicated things and made them worse by design. The games industry used to be, insulated, right? It used to be mostly removed from everything else around it. Movie, TV, whatever. It was its own thing. But when you look at modern AAA and then some, it's a part of a very, very different ecosystem now. Now you have global corporations, you have public relation strategists, you have the workplace policies that are just changing all of the time. And of course you have stuff like cultural expectations that make everything, even more annoying now. You can't say this is too offensive, you get the idea. And within that ecosystem that these things have operated in, you had these external organizations, right? The advocacy groups that have undeniably influenced the state of modern entertainment. Games, movies, TVs, comics, whatever you want, it's all of them. And these groups have transformed the internal culture of game studios and how they communicate publicly. And even how these studios approach the decisions when it comes to their content. This isn't unique to gaming, like I said, I know. It's happening across all entertainment industries. Either way, this external pressure has changed the products that we know and love. And modern studios these days, in comparison to, maybe 10 or 20 years ago, are balancing far more than just game design now. And because of how games are made right now with more layers from the corporate oversight guys, and then you have, like I said, the external consultation and the advocacy influence, like an SPLC existing that must, legitimize its existence. It leads to more priorities and things getting lost in the sauce now. There I go again with the lasagna allegory. Whatever. This creates friction, okay, as we all know. And it fragments how these games also get made. There's less clarity and cohesion, thus the unified vision is of course harder to maintain. And at first, all of these complexities were invisible to the player until they actually saw the final product, like a Spider-Man 2. But once you played a game that went through this filtering system, you could tell that it kind of stinks. It would feel over-designed, lacking a clear identity, and be inconsistent in its tone. That's a lot of games that did that too. And all of this has affected not just Bungie, but many studios. They have all, especially in a Western sense, been affected by the deluge of activism, all perpetrated by the groups that benefited from this, like the SPLC. And this story is not just about Bungie, it's about the direction of an entire industry that was sold a lie through virtuous means to shape the world and how we perceive it through smokes and mirrors. I'm just using Bungie as an example here is all, but it's all over. Again, Bungie isn't to blame really, like I said. Maybe to a degree, but they still got swindled like everybody else did. They got egg on their face for this now, that's true. But again, they likely didn't even know the difference because they, like every other Western company, was trying to navigate a minefield of expectations. But now that these bombs are going off, one thing is very clear. The game industry got played, and now we know why. The stakes here are enormous. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry that shapes global culture. And the question as to who influences the direction of that industry matters more than ever. Not just for developers or even companies, but everybody. If this industry is to move forward in such a way where it can welcome the players back into their arms and we can put these differences aside, decide, that would probably be for the best. Because the alternative is that we lose everything, and there will be no policy or messaging or oversight that can bring this back. Bungie was manipulated, as was many other companies outside of games too, but it doesn't mean that we have to be. So keep asking questions, stay logical, and always dig deeper. Thanks for being here. Subscribe if you'd like to, and take care of yourself.